Hey everyone, this is Amy Chan from CakeDecoratingSchool.com and welcome to our Color Mixing Live. We're going to talk about what colors we use and what kinds, how those relate to the color wheel, and some kind of basics about mixing colors. So we're going to talk about primary, secondary colors. We're going to mix some samples of each one and talk about doing things like making different shades, high chroma versus low chroma colors, and just like that beginning of color theory, and talk some about complementary colors. So I hope you sit back, watch, and enjoy. So first things first, what kind of food coloring do we use? I like and prefer liquid gel colors. They typically come in bottles. This is the really large size, but you can also buy them in tiny bottles as well. They have a nice thick consistency, right? They're going to squeeze out in drops, which I find makes them really easy to dispense and also makes it really easy to make color recipes, which becomes important if you're doing this maybe as a hobby, side business, or just as a pro, right? And there's also something called gel paste. Those are even thicker. They typically come in little pots with a top that you screw off. I find them a little harder and a little messier to dispense, but they are a really useful tool, and don't discount them even if you like liquid gels. I like the liquid gels mostly for doing things like royal icing, buttercream colors, and doing pastel to medium tones in things like fondant and gum paste. If I have to make a really intense shade in a fondant or gum paste, that's where I'm going to work in my gel paste colors, especially for dark things like deep reds or blacks on those things like fondant. So in terms of what colors of liquid gels we use in relation to the color wheel and how we're mixing, that is what I'm going to fill in. So I'm going to start with my primary colors. That would be your red, yellow, and blue. And if we're talking a little bit about things like mixing paint and we think about colors in those terms, these are colors that have to occur in nature and can't be blended. So things aren't exactly the same in food coloring as they are in mixing paint, and we're going to get into some of those differences. So as far as red goes, I use two shades. The first is Red Red, which I have here, and then I use Tulip Red. And I find that blending the two, my tulip bottle is a little older, I don't use it as much, so it's got the old label on it, gives me a nice shade of red, right? So it's a really nice blend between the two. The red is a little cooler, the tulip's a little warmer, and together they're going to make a nice color that we think of as being a really kind of true red color. So those are the two colors that I use for my reds. For my yellow, I'm just going to use lemon yellow. This is nice, what you would think of as a bright kind of citrusy yellow. You can use it for everything from making pastel shades to really, really intense ones. And then we're going to get into blue. And so normally when we think of blue, we think of that kind of just, you know, really kind of true shade, and that would be your royal blue. And this, like the red, is one where I buy two shades because your royal is going to give you that nice kind of royal blue. It's going to give you everything from really light pastel sky blues to those great medium tones that you would think of as a true blue to darker, more intense ones as well. And then I also get sky. And this is one of those things, if you want to do things like aqua shades and teals and other stuff, it actually has a really different tone to it and a really different feel. So you're really going to have to buy that second shade of blue if you want to be able to make the full range of blues, purples, and greens, right? So those are our kind of primary colors and what we buy for each of those. Then we're going to come to the secondary colors. Now, in terms of color like paint, you should, in theory, be able to mix equal parts of my yellow and red and get that kind of true shade of orange. And that is true for orange. It's true for green. Purple, it doesn't work out so hot. You get a shade that I like to refer to as murple. It never really looks like purple. It looks kind of murky and yucky and is one of those things that's just like, eh. And you definitely have to buy your purple. It's not something you should try to mix by blending red and blue, it's never gonna go very well. And I always just buy a nice shade of violet that's that true purple. And then if you want to make shades that are kind of closer to the red or have more blue in them, you can use your other colors like your red and your royal blue to adjust that. So always get violet. In terms of orange, you can most definitely mix red, lemon yellow, equal parts and get a nice true orange. I, however, end up doing a lot of stuff at Halloween time, and I find it is best just to buy my orange. It means I'm usually making a nice true shade of orange when I'm making it. I'm not doing a lot of tweaking to it. So in terms of time saving, it's a real time saver for me to go ahead and just buy Sunset Orange. But if you're looking to save money and you're okay mixing your oranges, that's definitely something you can accomplish without buying an actual color. You can do it using the red and lemon yellow and get a nice shade of orange. In terms of greens, this is one where I prefer to mix my greens. I could buy myself a nice shade of leaf green, and if you're usually just going to be making that kind of like true green color and not really going to be doing a lot of tweaking, then this might be something you want to buy. But I prefer to actually just use my lemon yellow along with my royal and sky blue and some other things like black and brown to make a lot of shades, because oftentimes I'm not trying to make that true green color. I'm trying to make shades like moss and pistachio or sage or whatever is popular this year, because we do a lot of stuff for weddings. So this is going to be something that I'm always going to mix. But that is more of a personal preference along with the orange, because these are definitely mixable colors, but you can also buy them as well. So I find it's best to do whatever is easiest for yourself and whatever kind of saves you the most in terms of time and money. Now there's things like brown. It would typically be a tertiary color, so it would be an equal mix of blue, red, and yellow, should in theory give you brown. With food coloring, it doesn't work out so hot. You're going to get a very ugly color that resembles something that kind of comes up in a little diaper, right? So instead of getting a nice brown, you're going to get something really ugly. So brown is always something that we want to buy, and I go with Buckeye Brown. It's a really nice, warm, kind of what you would think of as a true brown, and it's really easy to tweak by adding things like red, orange, and black to make a variety of different colors. So always go with the Buckeye Brown. If you've ever tried to mix brown with food coloring, you'll know that it's not really a fun little feat. I'm just gonna fill in my color over there for my sky as well. So this kind of gives us the basic of our kind of colors, and there's a few other things that I end up getting as well. So in terms of pinks, you could use just a little of either your reds to make a pink. But if you really want to do some things like some vibrant, bright shades, I find it's best to buy neon bright pink. And this is one of the only neon colors that I really buy. The rest of them you can kind of blend from the other things like sky, lemon, etc. But the neon bright pink is one of those tones that you just can't get by mixing with your reds. So I'll always buy myself a pink just so I have that. It's great for making soft pinks as well. You just use a tiny, tiny little bit and it'll last you a really long time. And then the last thing that I buy that I would say is probably essential is black. So I get a nice shade of coal black. This will give you intense, beautiful blacks. Black is one of those things that in theory should be a mix of kind of all colors together, should give you black, but it doesn't work out in food coloring. So black is one of those things that you definitely, if you're gonna make black frosting, you're gonna have to buy that, right? So it's not something that's blendable. So that's another addition to our color wheel would be some nice black. And I always go with that coal black shade. So these are the colors that I buy and I like to keep on hand. If you get really into color mixing and you occasionally have some whoopsies or you occasionally need to lighten things and make some monochromatic shades, you can always get yourself some liquid whitener. That can save some buttercream sometimes if you actually accidentally make a color too dark, or you're worried about it deepening too much, or anything like grease showing through. But so these are my shades: red, tulip. I like to buy sunset orange, definitely not necessary. Lemon yellow. I'm mixing all my greens. I'm doing my 2 blues, my royal and my sky, violet, neon bright pink, my buckeye brown, and my coal black. And that really allows me to mix kind of any color under the sun, any color under the rainbow, anything you can really think of. I'm able to mix it with these colors. And you know, my sunset orange is maybe kind of my indulgence shade, just because I get sick of mixing it, but you could really even do without that. And you can start off with little bottles. I always suggest that for people, like if you're just getting into cake decorating, get the little ones and then look at what you're using, look at what you're using the most, look at what you're using up quickly, and buy those shades in the larger bottles. The things you don't use as much, you can definitely buy in the little ones. And you can buy these things individually, you can buy them as sets. That's really up to you. So we're going to start out and we're going to mix some nice little shades, and I've got some that I pre-mixed as well to show you in comparison, to show you how much it develops. So I've just got some little ounces of buttercream out in little bowls, and we're just going to add a couple of drops of this color. This is even really more than you really need, just to get it to develop enough on camera right away, so that you get a nice little intense shade. So I'm just going to be using probably like 2 or 3 drops of each, and we'll start with my nice primary colors. So I'll do my red, yellow, and blue. So I'm just going to start with the ratio I normally use for my red, which is 2 drops of my red and 1 of my tulip, if I can get it to squeeze out. There it goes. Right, and that should give me a nice ratio, a nice blend, so that I'm getting a nice color of red. And I like using the tulip, not just because it's a warmer shade of red and it helps to kind of balance out the cooler red and give us a nice, beautiful profile to our reds, but also because it's a no taste color, right? So it's not going to add any background color, and using a mix of the two means that you're less likely to be able to actually kind of taste that food coloring in your frosting when you're done. And you can see this kind of might be hard to see on camera. It's actually showing up a little more intense than it is in person. It stops a little short of being red, and we want to do that. We want to make sure that we're not adding too much color, because it's going to develop over time. So even the difference in this shade versus the one that I made like an hour ago, it's going to be pretty apparent. And I'm just going to pull this over so you all can see, right? So you can see I made this around 10:15, so probably an hour ago, and you can see how much more intense it is. And it's almost to the point of being oversaturated. By tomorrow, it's going to be even more intense. So we don't even need this much color. I'm really just adding this much today. But normally if I were making these, you know, I'd maybe use 2 or 3 times the amount of frosting and add in that color, and that would give me a nice shade by tomorrow when it's really set up and it's really developed. So you want to make sure when you're mixing colors that you're really giving them time to develop and for those hues to saturate, and that'll mean you're using less coloring and it'll cost you less money, right? And you won't have that background taste and flavor to your colors. So just keep that in mind. I'm using much more today just to get them to show up and be nice and bright and demo it than you really actually need to use practically every day when you're making colors for cake decorating. Just make sure you're making your colors ahead of time so that they have time to kind of develop and bloom and really show off those nice, bright, vibrant tones without being oversaturated. And you can just really, I'll show you guys that again. Like, there's a nice difference. This is the same amount of frosting, same little drops of color, same ratio, and you can see how intense it is even just after an hour, right? But this is a great way to get nice reds, is always mix them ahead of time. It'll save you a lot of time, a lot of effort, and will mean you don't need to use as much color. So I'm just gonna put myself a little swipe right there, put my finished bowl off to the side and get that out of the way. And we'll go on and we'll make some yellow, right? So just do the same thing. Nice little drop. Just do 2 so we get nice bright color for you all on camera, and just give it a mix around. Hopefully while I was talking my buttercream didn't get too cold. Yeah, it's still good. I was trying to keep everything nice and warm so it'd be easy to mix around. And you can see that lemon yellow, really nice, bright, true shade of yellow. And so we've got some beautiful colors going on here. Keep going, and I'm gonna make my royal blue. And just go with the same thing. And a little tip, when you're using these kinds of bottles, make sure you keep those little nozzles closed in between uses. That'll keep it from gumming up inside that nozzle and keep your color, right, from drying out and keep you from having problems with your bottles and clogs and stuff like that. Because the food coloring is kind of sticky, right? And it's kind of thick and viscous, so if you leave those tops open, it can actually kind of start to dry out in there, and it can kind of gum up the tops, and sometimes then you need to free clogs, which is never fun. Right, so you can see our royal blue gives us that nice, beautiful shade of royal. It's a nice kind of true medium blue shade. Nice and gorgeous. And then I'm going to do my second blue, so my sky, just so you can see the difference in those two tones. And this is going to be fantastic if you want to do things like aqua shades, if you're looking to do things like, you know, a Tiffany blue, beautiful teal, even some of those dusty colors. It's what I would call an aquamarine kind of blue. And it has a certain kind of electric brightness to it, and it just has a very different tone and feel than the royal. And you can see it very quickly gets into that kind of electric blue feel. Gorgeous. I'm just going to put that right there next to my blue, and you can see, especially right next to each other, it's really easy to see the difference in the tones that you're going to get out of those food colorings. All right, so we're kind of done with our little primaries. So I'm going to go into some of my secondaries. And the first one I'm going to do is just my orange, just to show you what the sunset will give you. As long as it's behaving. There it is. And you can see that gives us a really nice, bright, very much in between red and yellow, orange. It's a beautiful kind of value. It's perfect for pumpkins and all sorts of other things. Now, next we'll do the purple. And then I'll mix up some green. And you can see this is going to give us a nice shade of violet. It's a beautiful kind of shade of purple. If I add even more, it'll get more intense. And it's a really easy shade to just kind of adjust as needed. So if you want to make more of a plum shade, you can add a little of that red to it. If you want to make more of a kind of like midnight purple, you can add some royal blue. It's going to be really easy to adjust. And right now it's just a little on the light side. Purple is one of those ones I find I have to add a little more to get intense colors than I do with some of the other ones. But that's just kind of one of those little things that you'll learn. Some colors will just take a little more to develop and build a darker shade versus others. The reds got really intense really quickly. The purple is one of those that's kind of a slow build, right? So I always like to give it plenty of time and sometimes just a little bit extra color. All right, so next, green. And I'm just gonna start out with a nice equal mix. So I'm just gonna do one each on my drops, one blue and one yellow, and we're gonna try and get them about the same size, which they usually are. Sometimes every once in a while you get one of those big old uncontrolled drops. And this should give us a nice kind of in-between shade. So in between that royal and that lemon, and it should give us a nice green. You can already see it mixing and blending down there in the bowl. And there we are, right? So easy enough to mix a nice true green, just equal parts lemon and royal. And then if I want to do something like make a nice kind of Kelly green, I might add a little more of my blue, maybe a touch of the sky. If I want to make it nice and kind of citrusy and really kind of bright and electric, I'll use maybe sky and lemon and a little more lemon. So the green shades are really easy to mix and blend, which is why I just prefer to keep my two blues and my one yellow on hand, because then it's really easy to make whatever shade of green you need, right? I'll just give this a little dab down in there, and you can see already I've got my nice primary, secondary colors, right? My red, yellow, and my blues, my orange, my green, and my purple. I'm gonna mix some of those kind of alternate shades, different things that you can't really make. So my brown, my black, and my pink next, just to show you what you're gonna get with those. I'll just start with the pink, just because I want to show how different it is than the red. So it's just going to give you a completely different tone. And if we're talking about straight paint mixing and that kind of stuff, then yes, you should be able to just take a little bit of red, mix it with a lot of white, and get any kind of pink you want to. But to get these really electric pinks with food coloring, it is something that you actually need to buy. So you can make various shades of light and pastel pink just by diluting or using very little of your red. But if you're looking to make really bright, really electric and vibrant pinks, then buying the neon pink is the way to go. And there we go. You can see already it's got a certain brightness to it. It's kind of like that sky blue. You're never going to be able to make those aqua tones using royal. So the pink is the same way. You're never going to be able to make those bright, vibrant pinks by using things like red red or tulip red. So that's one of our little extra colors. And then we'll do our little brown. So brown is one of those things I think I get asked about the most. It's right up there with making blacks and reds. People are like, how do you make brown? You don't, you buy it. You're just never gonna make a really good brown trying to mix it. And especially if you like doing those kind of antique, muted, or dusty shades, having a nice brown on hand to just add a touch of to make those is going to really make your life easier. Or, I don't know, for several years I did a lot of woodland tree cakes. Having my brown on hand, always great for that. So you can see this gives us a nice, very, I would say, true warm shade of brown that's very easy to adjust. If I wanted to make something like a walnut or mahogany color, I can add black to it. If I want to make it warmer and kind of amberish or kind of caramel, I can add some things like oranges and reds, even yellows, just to kind of change that, you know, kind of give it more of a honey tone or something of that nature. It's really easy to adjust this to make it a little more customized, a little less kind of true, you know, that kind of, I don't know, I think of like elementary school kind of shades of colors, those really like pure color wheel tones. So if you're looking to go off of this, I always start with this and then add other colors to make it just a more complex shade. But that's a great brown that you get with the Buckeye brown, and it's a nice base for then mixing those more kind of complex shades that you might want or might prefer or might look more natural. And then finally, black. So black is another one of those colors, just like the red. Today I'm using way more than you would really need in order to get a black. So if I were doing this, I'd probably use probably like 3 times the frosting for the amount of food coloring we're using, just because it's really going to develop given the time. And I actually went ahead and mixed this ahead of time as well, because black is one of those things. The red looked pretty red when we did it, and it already looked pretty intense. This is going to look like chalkboard color, and that's really kind of where you want to stop. So it's going to look a lot lighter than it should, and it's probably going to make you question your sanity a little bit. You're going to think, is it black yet? No, I should add more color. But usually when you start to think that, that's right when you're in the right territory, or you've maybe already gone a little too far. So you can see this looks like a kind of dark gray right now. That's fantastic. You don't want to really go more than that. It's going to deepen really quickly and really intensely. And I have some examples. So I mixed this an hour ago, and it's already kind of to the point that it's a nice black. I have some stuff from earlier in the week that I used for a project that I was doing on camera. So I added the same kind of amount of color just to make it build quickly, but you can see now it's almost to the point, like it's deep, dark depths of space level black. So it's almost a little too much color there, right? So giving colors like black and red the time to develop will mean that you have to use less of that food coloring, you get less of that taste in there, and it just, you know, it's overall more pleasant, because when you get too much color in it, it kind of starts to dull the surface of your frosting sometimes. So always make sure you mix those super intense colors at least a day ahead of time before you're going to use them, because then you can check the color, tweak it a little bit. You can even, you know, lighten it a little bit if needed, if it's gone too far. But this will turn into a really nice, super intense black. I always kind of say, especially for buttercreams, royal icings, if you're making black, think about like one of those old school chalkboards that was actually, you know, a black color. After it's been used, it kind of has that dusty feeling to it where it's like a dark kind of charcoaly gray. That's a great place to stop. And I'd actually, if I was making this for an order, even go a little lighter than this, because it'll develop into a really nice deep black that'll have a really beautiful look to the frosting. Okay, so those are our basic colors. And we've got these kind of bright, intense primary hues to them. And this is what I would call kind of, or most people would call a high chroma color, right? So these are very saturated or intense shades of these colors. There are things you would describe as being bright or vivid, right? And they're kind of very, what people call pure tones, right? This is like really just most definitely yellow, it's orange, it's red, right? There's kind of no question. Are we, you know, we're not in territories like mauve or anything like that. we can make what are called low chroma versions of these. So think things that are described as soft, muted, or dusty. And there's two really easy ways to make low chroma versions of colors. And I'm just going to take, I think maybe a little bit of my pink to do that. So the first would be just to add, right, some white into it. And that is a great way to just make a low chroma version of it. So basically you're doing things like making pastels, right? So then we have a lighter version of that same color, right? So it's the same color pink, it's just much, much lighter. And it's important to note because they sell food colorings, right, for making cakes and other stuff in a lot of different shades. So you'll notice too that oftentimes they'll sell pastel shades, but if you have everything you need to make every color, just adding liquid whitener or more buttercream or using less food coloring when you mix your colors means you can make all those pastel shades. And you can make them in a range of values. You can make them super, super light, medium to really intense tones. And the other thing you can do is not just add white, but add just a touch of black or even brown or anything else. But basically it's making a almost grayscale of color when it comes to your different shades. I'm just going to take out a little bit of that pink, and then I'm just going to take just a tiny bit of that black, and we're going to make another muted shade of this. And this is going to be great for creating things like monochromatic color palettes. So colors that'll work together, they kind of have a nice little gradient to them, right? So I have a dulled version of that pink as well. And you can see that it's really easy to make a range of kind of complex colors, right? I have my intense kind of true high chroma shade of my pink, and I've got two low chroma versions here. One with just white and one where I added a touch of black to that just to give it a little bit of a muted feel, a little kind of more depth, more range, make it a little softer, a little less baby pink, right? A little more like just like a touch of that mauve to it. So there's a lot of great easy ways you can play with the colors that you make to make them just a little more complex, a little more kind of adult, right? When we get into these kind of pure tones, it feels very primary, very kid's birthday, and sometimes we want to make more sophisticated shades. The other thing to talk about just a little bit are complements, right? So colors that are going to work well together. I'm just going to pull my little color wheel out again, right? So if we think about it in terms of things like branding and advertising, you see things like sports teams. A lot of times you'll see things like purple and yellow together, orange and blue. I think major holidays like Christmas, red and green. It's because they're opposite of each other on the color wheel, right? Red is opposite of green. Green is a mix of that blue and yellow. So if you were talking about this true shade of green, literally you're talking about the three colors mixed together to make brown and kind of cancel each other out. So because they're farthest away from each other on that color wheel, when you put them next to each other, they provide a lot of contrast and they look really pleasing to the eye because they're easy for our eyes to differentiate, they're easy for our brains to differentiate, and they really stand out next to each other. So think purple and yellow, classic LA Lakers, right? Blue and orange, New York Mets. There's tons of examples of that, like things being opposite of each other on the color wheel. You're going to see those again in things like advertising, with things like sports teams, company logos and stuff like that, because it makes them pop out to us. It grabs our attention. So that's kind of one of those first little steps into color theory and something you want to think about when you're creating colors to make your cakes. what is going to make something stand out. So if you have beautiful, lovely, say light pink flowers, right? Because pink is the low chroma version of red, pairing it with a nice light sage green will make those flowers stand out, because essentially you're green and red, right? It's just lower chroma versions of those two colors. So when you think about your colors, you want to make sure that you're picking things that'll help your kind of heroes stand out. So if you're making a lot of piped, beautiful buttercream flowers, you really want to make sure that you're giving them what they need to help them stand out. So if I'm making lots of lovely, beautiful kind of little mauve pink buttercream roses, I maybe want to make a nice light shade of that green and add a little black to it as well, so that I have those nice, beautiful kind of contrasting colors that will complement each other well, right? They work together, but because of the distance between them on the color wheel, they're really going to help each other stand out. So that green behind that is really important to help those flowers pop off the surface of your cake. So it's just some basic things to think about when you're designing your cakes. And we'll go into more on that in future lives and talk about how you can use the color wheel to really create nice color palettes to really make those details stand out and look beautiful and pleasing to your customers. And so that is it for color mixing today. We hope you really enjoyed this class and it helped you learn a little more about what colors you might want to buy and how you can use them to create a variety of different shades that you need in your projects.